We can have jurors.
Let's all rise for the jury, please. Yes, ma'am. You can sit down.
They're standing up for you all.
Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you again. Glad y'all survived the weather. It was something. At least for us it was. I'm sure y'all are used to it. We're ready to resume the jury selection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Okay, pick up where we left off. Juror number 5. Okay, you work currently as a massage therapist, correct?
I do.
Okay, how long have you worked in that field?
18 years.
Okay, so have you done that most of your professional career?
Yeah, I had about 5 years out of college where I was trying to figure out what I was doing, so I went back to school.
Okay.
I've been doing that ever since.
During those 5 years, what type of work did you do?
I spent a year working for a bank. I spent a year and a half working for a private investigator. And I spent probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years, to kind of overlap with school, working with an engineering firm in there.
Okay. And with the, when you went back to school, is that for massage therapy?
Yes.
Okay. And when you worked with a private investigator, what type of private investigations? Was it with a criminal defense attorney? Was it with, like, domestic, divorce type situations?
We mostly did workers' compensation investigations.
Okay.
Sometimes we did insurance fraud, basic background checks.
Okay.
We were kind of in that early phase of online background checking.
Okay.
I didn't do that part. I was an admin assistant. I typed reports and editing and all
Okay. All right. Now, your spouse has got an interesting job. He's a historical preservation planner.
Yeah, he spent 18 years as the director of historic preservation for Jekyll.
Okay.
He's now currently with the city planning department for the city of Brunswick.
Okay. All right. Has he basically worked in that same field throughout his entire career?
Yeah, I think the 3 years before that, when we were in Cobb County, he worked at Kennesaw Civil War Museum.
Oh, okay. Right there downtown with the trains and everything?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you have not quite adult children, I guess, mid to late teen children.
I have a senior and a sophomore.
Okay. All right. I believe you stated that you know somebody who is a prosecutor or has prosecuted before?
I do. One of my best friends from college is a prosecuting attorney for Harris County, Texas, which is Houston. And she is currently what they call the Officer of Prosecutorial Integrity. So she does in-house case review, make sure things that are, if they're eligible for appeal or if there are grounds for misconduct appeals. She also works with an Innocence Project through their county and has been doing training nationally and internationally on basically prosecutorial integrity.
Okay. Kind of double checking the work of the prosecutor's work before that's happened.
And training. They do training for law enforcement and for prosecutors on, avoiding the pitfalls that result in either bad convictions or wrongful convictions.
And you stated that you've known a defense attorney as well.
I do. She mostly does corporate law now, corporate liability, but she has done also a from college.
Okay. And where does she practice?
San Diego.
Doubt we've come across her.
Huh?
I said I doubt we've come across her.
Probably not.
All right. All right.
Mr. Boring, I need to interrupt.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because you're asking everybody who knows people, but nobody's asked if I know anybody.
Okay.
But your husband and my son were in high school together.
Yes, ma'am, they were.
Okay. Anything about, I can't imagine how it would be, but anything that would affect your ability to sit on this jury because of that relationship or?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Unless there was that party.
Yeah. We don't have any evidence of that.
Tim, but that was before me, so I only know that through family stories.
Okay.
I just figured you better know.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So you talked about how knowing somebody that works in those groups with a prosecutor or defense attorney. You said, do you know anybody that works in the court system here, or is that what you've already talked about?
I do know one of the judges here. He's in a different court. He handles like property disputes and evictions and code violations. I cannot think of his last name to save my life. His first name is Chris.
Okay.
But he worked with my husband for several years. So.
All right. Okay. Now, you either currently or in the past have had a job where you've had to supervise people?
I currently have a job where I supervise people.
Okay.
While I am a massage therapist, I actually own and operate a wellness studio or a cooperative of sorts. We have other practitioners, yoga instructors. So I am primarily in charge of, I hate to call it hiring and firing because we're a little more cooperative than an employee relationship, but ultimately I do decide who comes in and if they have to leave, I have to make that decision.
Okay. I believe you stated you also, people or have friends or family that have been in law enforcement before?
I have my friend who's the prosecutor.
Yes.
Her husband was a detective for the city of Houston. Locally, I don't know that many, but there are several random connections.
Okay. And you also have some connections, friends or family in the military, or have been in the military?
My father was an Army reservist in the early 70s. My grandfather served in World War II. My husband's grandfather also served. So there's some connection.
I believe you also stated that you've had some type of legal training, legal background, something of that nature.
It's kind of early in periphery. I was pre-law in college originally. I have an English degree, I have a social science degree, I have a poli-sci minor. I took the LSAT, that's as far as I went.
Okay. Good for you.
I did take some paralegal classes at one time.
Okay. All right. Well, you talked about several things that you've done, so this may encompass some of these other answers you gave. When you said people in the medical field, is that something other than kind of your studies, or do you know somebody who works in the medical field?
I have a couple of close friends, again, from college that are doctors.
Okay.
And because of the nature of my work, I do interact with,
right.
Especially orthopedists or pain management specialists, physical therapists, that kind of thing.
Okay. Now, you also know somebody or yourself have had training in the field of psychology or psychiatry or counseling or something like that?
I took some classes in college. Again, a lot of my clients are in that field. And then I do have a close friend who is a nurse practitioner with a psychology focus, I guess is what they call it.
You have also had some involvement with DFACS, or know somebody that's had some involvement with DFACS before?
I do have a friend who is a counselor that works specifically with DFACS, and then I have another who was a lawyer, child advocate in Florida.
Okay. And I think finally in that realm, you've known somebody who's worked in IT or computer programming or something of that nature.
I know several people, just in my friend pool. My brother specifically does hardware and network design, works for an MRI imaging company in our hometown.
Okay. You stated that you do attend a religious, or you belong to a religious organization or attend a church or something of that nature?
We're members of St. Francis Catholic Church downtown. We don't attend regularly. We are on the roster.
Okay. Now, kind of moving on to the whole technology issue, you stated that you actually do, aside from texting, you do message on cell phone, other applications or messaging applications. What type do you use?
Typically, I use Facebook Messenger. Sometimes I use game in-app messaging with certain people if they happen to contact me that way. Again, I'm in a client-heavy field, so people will find weird ways to contact me sometimes.
Right.
But
And they need you, right?
yeah, but I do have Twitter, but it's a business account, so occasionally I have direct messaging that way, but it's usually business related.
Okay. And so all the other things we talked about, you said you're familiar with Craigslist.
I am. I have bought and sold on Craigslist.
And Twitter, you're familiar with it?
I am.
Okay. And how often do you use it, aside from messaging, like posting things on Twitter? Is it more of a business thing, or do you use it for personal, or is it kind of a mix?
For posting, it's almost all business. And I have what's called a direct link to my Facebook page. So if I post a business page thing on Facebook, it posts to my business Twitter in duplicate. I don't post anything personally on Twitter. I do read Twitter from a personal basis. Sometimes I like or click on things that way. But.
Okay. Now, you stated that you've, in one of these forums or something like that in social media, you've actually messaged somebody that you've never met in person before. Tell me about that.
That's either going to be business related, because I do get clients sometimes who have questions about the studio or appointments. Sometimes they're referrals, so I may not know who they are until I've made contact.
Okay.
I also served several years on my alumni board for my university. Lots of people contact you that way when your name is printed on the website. You know, they think they can bend your ears. So,
Right.
I have way more Facebook friends than I actually have people that I know who they are.
Okay. I understand. Okay. Now, you've actually written a letter to the editor before.
I have.
Okay. Tell me about that. As much as you remember.
Quite a while. Probably in two different cases. Locally, I wrote several letters to the editor probably 15 years ago when we were having an issue with the school board, and they refused to fill seats. And I did write a letter to the editor complaining that we had qualified candidates that they had not, approved.
Right.
Again, when I was on my alumni board, we were going through a weird relationship with the alumni board with the university president. I wrote several letters to the editor about different things involving that situation.
Okay. Now, you have also, I believe, you've given an opinion online as well. Tell me about that.
About what in particular?
Yeah, just what type of opinions, or I guess in what forum have you done that?
That typically happens in Facebook. Every once in a while, I reply to an actual chat forum if it links out somewhere in the comments. I don't do a whole lot of that. But,
right. Okay. Do you either contribute to or have a blog or something of some sort? Is that business related or something different?
I currently have a business related blog that's attached to our website, and I do a monthly newsletter, which is not technically a blog, but it's kind of laid out like one.
Okay.
And then I used to maintain a blog with our alumni association, but that's not my role anymore.
Okay, moving on a little bit from that to legal television shows and things of that nature. What ones are you particularly fond of? Some of the Boston Legal CSI Law and Order ones, the more forensic file ones, or the more talk show type?
Not talk show.
Okay.
Sometimes I do the more reality-based ones, 60 Minutes or Dateline. Do watch a lot of the fictional ones.
Yeah.
Probably more than I could name at this point. And then if the follow-up was the documentaries, I've watched Making Murderer. I watched the OJ American Crime reenactment. Seems like there was enough. I listened to Serial, both seasons of that on the podcast.
Okay. All right. I believe you stated you at some point have followed a real trial, either in TV or in court or in the news for some reason that particularly struck your interest.
We actually did follow the OJ trial. We were in college when that happened, and followed it fairly closely as much as you could.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to Mississippi University for Women in Columbus, Mississippi.
All right. Now, you stated you volunteered with children before? And obviously, you've got 2 children, so.
I have 2 children. I was, a room mom many times. I was a Girl Scout leader for 2 or 3 years. I was assistant Girl Scout leader for a year or so before that.
Okay. And you've had a good experience with law enforcement?
I've had several good experiences with law enforcement for different reasons.
Okay.
Just either being helpful or handling something in a way that was easy and simple. Nothing big. But.
Okay. You said you know somebody who's been treated unfairly by, or in your opinion or their opinion, the court system for some reason.
My friend who is a prosecutor, her husband, as I said, was a homicide detective.
Yeah.
He was actually fired several years ago, and that entire process was very public and seemed to me to be very much a blame the entire department on him.
Okay.
Because he was no longer in the department.
Okay, kind of a scapegoat for the sins of everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to get too specific, but generally, what was the issue or the allegation?
The allegation was that he was not handling the paperwork on the cases correctly, not finishing, not filing away, not doing all the paperwork, not following up in cases where there wasn't enough evidence.
Okay. And another one, I can't see how it would, but anyway, that would affect your ability to be fair to both sides in this case?
No.
Okay. All right. I believe you stated you've known somebody who's been convicted of a crime before or arrested for a crime or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
My husband has actually been arrested for trespassing in high school, and while that predated me, it's a family lore.
Oh.
Connects us to Judge Staley.
Okay. All right.
That's one. And then I do have an uncle by marriage who served time in prison.
Okay. I don't mean to pry too much. Just generally, what type of...
It was a statutory rape case.
Okay. Did you know him very well or know the facts of the case very well or anything like that?
I didn't know the facts of that particular case.
Okay.
But I did know that behavior was a problem with him.
Okay. And you may not know enough about it. Do you have an opinion as to whether that case was handled fairly or appropriately?
My assumption is that it was.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. I believe you stated that you've known somebody who suffered the sudden death of a child.
Yes, I have a couple of clients who have lost children to cancer,
Okay.
but no one directly close to me.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned before you lived in Cobb. How long again?
I lived there from 1995 until 2000.
Okay. And when you were living in Cobb, why had y'all moved to Cobb? What was it job related or?
At the time, that's my husband's hometown.
Yeah.
He was in graduate school. I had just finished undergrad. I actually moved in with my future in-laws at the time. I did not have a job. It was just a place to go that wasn't Missouri, which was home.
Okay.
And well, he was at Georgia College in Milledgeville, so it was an easy commute back and forth.
All right. And when's the last time you've been back to Cobb?
That would have been when we went to the Glen Academy Altoona State football game in, was that November or December?
Okay. And Glen Academy, that's right down the street from here?
Yes.
Okay. Like, how far can you?
Oh, maybe a mile.
Okay. All right. Now, you're familiar with I guess the Chick-fil-A we'd spoken about, the Acres Mill area. So there are a lot of Chick-fil-A's in Cobb County.
There are. I assume it's the same one. When I worked with the engineering firm, our building was right down in that area. I don't think it actually exists anymore. It used to be kind of a half-round building that overhung I-75.
Okay.
It was right there at Acres Mill before they built the cross across the interstate. You couldn't cross at Acres Mill at the time.
Okay. All right.
And so if it's the same one, that Chick-fil-A was right outside our complex.
Okay. And I assume that knowing Acres Mill and Home Depot headquarters, that's all from that same time.
Even when we relocated, we were in a building that's in just a couple miles away in Vinings. I can't remember the name of the complex, but it's right over there near the Home Depot headquarters.
Okay. All right. You talked about, let me see. Just one question that the defense had asked you about. You've known somebody that's had a sex addiction before or something like that?
That was my uncle who went to jail.
Okay. All right. All All right. I think for now, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning.
And so, if I understand the connection, what the judge is telling us, y'all are agreeing to, is that your son went to school with the judge's son?
My husband,
Your husband went to school with the judge's son?
yeah, my husband and my brother-in-law actually both went to school with her stepson or son.
Yeah,
Okay.
my stepson.
Okay. And did you know Judge Staley Clark?
I have met her once before, but it was probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. What were the circumstances of that meeting?
I'm fairly positive that it was her son's wedding.
Okay. And were you married at the time?
I do not know. Do you know when they got? I think so. There were a bunch of us that all got married in the same, year-long window.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it was before or after, but there was kind of a season of weddings that year.
It was 19 years ago in June. They'll be married 20 years this
Then
coming
yes,
June.
we were married already. We were married 20 years ago in August. So.
Okay. And have you had any other reason to have any interaction with the judge over those 19 plus years?
No.
Okay. And so you said Cobb County is home for your husband. Did he go to Marietta High School, do you?
He did.
Okay. You said y'all went recently to the back up to the area for the Alatoona football game.
We did.
Okay. Do you visit? How often, if ever, do you visit Cobb County or the Marietta area?
Usually a couple of times a year. My brother and sister-in-law and niece and nephew still live there.
Okay.
So we go up either for Thanksgiving or Christmas or somewhere around. We try to get up there at least once in the summer. It didn't happen this year, but
Okay. Where do you stay when you go up there?
usually with my sister and brother.
Do you know what area
They
that is?
live inside the city limits, very near Marietta High School. I cannot think of the name of their subdivision, but it's literally just like up a hill and behind the
Okay.
current new high school.
Okay. And then, so you would be familiar with Cumberland Mall area as well?
Yes,
All right. Have you ever shopped at Cumberland Mall?
I have.
Okay. And so you know where the intersection would be at Pace's Ferry and 285?
Yes,
Okay. You know Cumberland Boulevard?
probably. It's been a long time since I've been there.
Okay.
Is it? Do you know if it's in front or behind?
It intersects with Pace's Ferry.
I'm sure I've driven it. I can't recall.
Generally, you know that area?
Yes.
Around 285 and the Smyrna area?
I do.
Okay. All right. All right, so you'd indicated that you watch lots of fictional shows about courtrooms or cases and whatnot, and some true crime shows as well?
Yes.
What about the talk shows?
Almost none.
Okay. And you've listened to podcasts.
I have.
You said you listened to both seasons of Serial.
I did.
As you listened to those, or after you listened to those, did you have the occasion to go back and get on the internet and do any sort of follow-up to read and kind of investigate for yourself what was accurate and what may have been exaggerated?
I did some.
Okay.
I did read a couple of articles about it. A couple of friends and I that were all listening did share some information back and forth. I mean, I didn't go so far as to get into Reddits or subreddits, but I've read several articles and postings and kind of kept up with at least season one. I know they've gone back on the case in that case and reheard parts of it and reissued a couple of the appeals. So I've done some.
Okay. Dateline and shows of that nature you indicated that you watch, which are, to put them in a category, those are true crime type shows.
Right.
Have you ever, while watching the show or afterwards, gone back and followed up and looked anything up on the internet to see what happened to the people or see how accurate the reporting was?
And not on those particular ones.
Just on the podcasts?
Just on.
Okay. You indicated, I believe, that you read. Well, let's see. I believe you indicated that you read books or had read crime novels or true crime type stories or books.
I've read a few. I've read a book about the Leo Frank case in Marietta.
Dead Shall Rise.
Yes.
That was tough to get through, wasn't it?
There is another, and I honestly can't remember what it is. I don't read a lot of mystery that way. I do read a lot of articles, sometimes very in-depth ones, or follow up that way. But book-wise, I think that's the only one that sticks out in my head.
Okay. Obviously, that was an incredibly detailed book. Did you go back, get on the internet, and do any follow-up to find out what happened to any of those individuals in the book, or follow up on the accuracy of any of the accounts that were detailed?
I did not on the internet. I did watch, it seems like they did some show about it that we watched on TV, but I can't remember what it was called. I don't know if it was a local one. I can't remember.
Okay. You mentioned Reddit. How often, if ever, do you use Reddit?
I actually don't use Reddit, but I have friends who do. So when they start talking things about, have you read this subreddit, my answer is usually absolutely not.
Okay.
Way too deep down the rabbit hole for me most of the time.
Do you understand the kind of the format, the layout, how it's presented? Then you know what it looks like if you see it.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And obviously you've discussed using Facebook. Do some of your Facebook friends ever post anything on Facebook directly from Reddit?
Maybe. I have no recollection of that particular one. I'm sure they have.
And how often would you say you use Facebook?
Okay.
Okay. Do you check it a couple of times a day?
Absolutely.
And do you just kind of scroll through to see if there's anything that interests you?
I scroll. Sometimes I save things to read for later. I'm in an appointment-based business, so I have 10 or 15 minutes between people I can post. So sometimes things get saved till later. I do read a lot of information about all kinds of things, so I do save things and read them later. From Facebook or from Pocket Reminders or from the Daily Dot or something like that.
Right. Okay, so news and articles, videos, stories, or whatever come to you on Facebook where you can access them, but sometimes you just save them and go back to them and read them later.
Yes.
Okay. What about posting? Do you post stuff on Facebook?
At least, usually once a day.
Okay.
Sometimes.
All right. And obviously your business and your sort of link, your footprint is sort of linked up.
Mm-hmm.
So do you post things about your business as well as personal?
Yes, but on two separate things. I have a personal profile. Then I actually administer primarily two Facebook pages, one for my massage business and one for my studio business. And then I serve as admin on probably 3 other business Facebook pages that are connected to mine, my reflexologist, our yoga instructions. We have a community yoga page, that kind of thing. I do, in terms of posting, I try to keep those things separate, which is the benefit of having a separate presence. They are linked on the backside, obviously, but I try not to link them on the front side.
Right. All right. Well, just the last thing I want to follow up about posting. Some folks are kind of fly by. They scroll through and they read what they want, open what they want, and then some people like and comment. Do you regularly give feedback as you scroll through, liking things or posting a short comment?
I like a lot of things. And particularly politically, I try to stay in the realm of like and not so much comment, because my family and I don't necessarily line up, so it helps to avoid a little conflict that way.
Right.
On my friends' stuff, I do comment and post and like and love and smiley face and whatever else.
Sure.
You know, and it may be their kids or their kittens or their, you know, whatever, their accomplishments.
And like a lot of us, you say you've got a lot more Facebook friends than you people you may actually know.
Correct. I hide them sometimes.
But those folks, they too post, and they too send links to articles or videos. And occasionally you will look at those links or pull them up or save them for later, as well as those coming in from your actual friends.
Yeah, sometimes.
Which means occasionally you may comment or like those type of posts as well. Okay. And I don't recall if you indicated that you used Instagram much.
I have both a personal and a business Instagram. I check it more often than I post to it, but I do have them.
Yeah. Just scrolling through.
He taps on my kid.
Yeah, that's you've got a 15 and a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a 15-year-old, and do you do like I do and try to friend on Instagram all of your
A few of them.
teenagers' friends?
A few.
It's a good way to keep track, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. But do you also kind of like just periodically as you scroll through on that as well?
I do.
Okay. All right. There was a question that you answered that's going to require that we talk to you in private about something. But I think there's just one or two things that I want to follow up on before we get to that. One of them was public service announcements. You'd indicated that you had some familiarity with public service announcements, such as the governor's Look Again campaign, reminding parents to double check for children. What in particular have you been exposed to?
I have not actually heard one, technically, because I don't really listen to regular radio.
Okay.
It's serious. However, I did read an article not that long ago that talked about the implementation of that program and the various efforts they had gone to try to increase awareness.
Okay. Particularly the Look Again program?
Yes.
All right.
It actually covered programs in several states. It mentioned the Georgia one in particular.
Do you remember what the? Do you remember where you got that article? Where it came from? Who wrote it?
You know, I do not. It was very long. It covered many cases of child death, not just hot cars, but like kids that got run over on the driveway, those kinds of things. It talked a lot about the psychology behind how it does or doesn't happen, and then there was a fairly in-depth review of the different ways that the legal system had dealt with them in various states with various charges.
Okay. Between now and when we talk to you privately, if you think of where that article came from, I'd like to get that information from you. Okay.
Okay.
How long ago did you read this?
It's probably been in the last couple of months.
Okay. All right. You indicated that you had some familiarity with websites that monitor child deaths in cars, such as Kids in Cars or NoHeatStroke.org.
That was actually from the same article.
Same article?
Yes.
Okay. Did you, did you follow up yourself and actually go to any of those sites? And
I did not.
Did not. Okay. You indicated also that you'd heard, separate and apart from any PSAs or stories about children, that you'd heard some PSAs about not leaving animals or not forgetting your animals in a car. Was that something separate and apart from what this article?
Yes, and I'm not sure, that I heard it on the radio, but I have seen articles and links on social media about those things. We have a fairly active animal rights group in the area. They post a lot of that kind of stuff about reminding people not to leave your dogs in the car, or to make sure they have adequate water, or to call animal control if you see that.
You indicated that you had done research regarding the purchase of a car seat.
I did back when my children were needing car seats.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Okay. And would that have been just, Googling on the internet, what are the best car seats or what are the safest car seats or something of that nature?
I'm not sure we Googled them 20 years ago. 18. I might have been on the Yahoo. I don't know. Actually, it seems like I did most of that from articles from parenting magazines,
okay,
other information, consumer reports. I don't remember it being internet specific at the time.
You didn't just send your husband out to Toys R Us and say, "Go get a car seat, come back."
I did not.
Whatever's the cheapest.
I did not.
Okay. You wanted what was the safest.
I did. Okay. Now, my husband's a very good researcher, but I did a lot of that myself at the time.
All right. I can't remember how I asked this question, but I've got a number written down by your name here. I asked about if anybody's was not familiar with, or if anybody's children did not fall asleep in their car seat regularly, and I've got your number written down there, and I just don't remember how I phrased the question. Is that?
I think you asked if they did fall asleep.
They did fall asleep.
I had one that routinely slept in the car.
Okay.
As soon as I buckled her seatbelt.
Okay.
Yeah. I also had one that used to scream in the car when we put them in.
They're all different, aren't they? Okay. Which gets me to something I want to talk to you a little bit more about, and that is when your children were young, they were only 2 years apart, so there would have been a period of time where you probably had 2 car seats in the car.
They were 20 months apart, so yes, there was a time when I actually had 2 rear-facing car seats.
Okay. What kind of vehicle was it?
Initially, I had a Nissan Maxima. Then I had a Nissan Sentra. Then I had a Volvo XC70. By then, I think we were both forward-facing, or maybe one forward, one rear still.
Okay.
I think the Volvo was the last car we had car seats in.
Were you the one primarily responsible for transporting the children around during those years when they would have been in car seats?
I was primarily, yes.
Okay. Did your husband keep a set of car seats in his car as well?
At one time he did, and then he switched cars, and it did not take the seat very well, so we did not do that. But there was a time, yes, when he had his own seat.
All right. Now, your work history is such that there may have been periods of time where you could have been a full-time caregiver and be at home during the day, right?
That's correct.
All right. So during those years, were you taking the kids to daycare, or were they just staying at home with you most of the time?
The first year or two that we lived here, I was fresh out of massage school. I had an 11-month-old when we moved here. I was pregnant with the next one. I would say the first couple of years, my daughter went to Mother's Morning Out 1 or 2 days a week after I learned that we were having another baby. And so it was very sporadic. Like they went to half day, like not going out of preschool 2 to 3 days a week, not always on the same day. So I had a single day with each kid, and then a free day usually. But in the rest of the time they were home. It was never more than a half day until they went to care.
What is Mother's Morning out?
It's like structured daycare that's not preschool.
Okay. And what was that? So it's basically it's daycare.
Right. It's usually specific. Like it's not daycare for babysitting. They go to a little class.
Okay.
But yes, it's to give you 4 hours without your child.
Okay.
It's the mother's morning now.
Okay. Were there days where you needed 4 hours without your child?
Absolutely.
Okay. A little break.
Yeah.
All right. And so during the time when you would need a little break to do your little thing or to clear your head or to get a breather, you would take your children there. And was this a location that was close to home?
It was actually on St. Simon's Island.
Okay.
That sounds like it's a long way away since I live downtown, but it's really about 10 miles maybe.
Right.
And we had set days that we went. It wasn't
Okay.
just drop in. I had to, they had a scheduled time that they went. So if they went 1 day a week, they went every Wednesday.
All right.
So I would, drive them 10 miles and drop them off every 4 hours.
Even though it was a set schedule, did you have an identical route each and every day, or were there ever times where you stopped for gas or coffee or donuts or snacks to take to the room or dry cleaning or anything?
I'm sure there probably were at times, but that was not my normal routine.
Okay.
Usually I did all of my running around after I dropped the kids off to school.
Okay. So on those Wednesdays or days that you had your set schedule to get your breather to take them there, it became very much a routine, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. And then how often would your husband take over for you to make that run?
In those very early years, for that run, probably every couple of months, he'd have to do a day or two if I've been out of town.
Okay. You have contested a traffic citation.
I have.
Tell me about that.
It was actually in Cobb County. I was driving to Roswell to go to work one morning in the rain. I was given a ticket. I was told I was going 60 miles an hour over the speed limit. I did not think that I was. I didn't contest that I was speeding, but I didn't think I was going that fast.
Okay. All right. So we've established that it was not the crime of the century.
No.
And you certainly were not taken into custody, I assume, or anything of that nature?
I was not.
Okay. But you left the encounter with the feeling that the officer had done some exaggeration.
Yes.
Okay. And Judge Daley Clark was not the judge that you appeared before for that?
I didn't even make it to the judge. I made it to the lawyer's table when
Okay.
she asked me why in the world I was there, because I didn't have any traffic tickets in Georgia. And I said, because I don't think I was going this fast. She was like, I pulled your record. Your record's clean. Why are you contesting this? And I said, because I didn't think I was going that fast. And so they knocked it down below 15, I guess, which is mandatory insurance reporting.
Right,
And
right.
I went ahead and paid the ticket. I just didn't have points on my insurance.
Okay.
So.
Well, that was the lawyers, we would count that as a win. Okay. So you did well. Congratulations. All right, but that's the only time you've ever done that, contested a ticket.
Yes.
Okay. Just got a few more things here. You done? You answered one. Is this something that you can share with us? You indicated that you knew some family or friends who'd had an affair before. Is that something you can share with us?
Yeah, it depends on how much detail you need. I do have a close friend who had an affair with a married man.
Okay.
And one of my husband's bosses, who I was fairly close with, he and his wife, he had an affair with an employee. I also have a former boss who had an affair with another boss of mine when I was in college.
The friend that you were talking about, you said she had an affair with a married man. Was this something in recently? Oh,
No, it was probably 10 years ago, maybe 12.
okay. Is this a close friend?
She is a very close friend.
All right. You're still friends with her?
I am.
Okay. Was she married at the time?
She was not.
Okay. I think there were just a couple of other things that we're going to have to follow up in private, but I sure do appreciate you sharing with us this morning. Thank you.
Morning, juror number 6. How are you today? All right. So, got a few questions here. I know we're going to follow up on some later. So, you're a contractor. How long have you been working in that field? Okay. Have you ever worked in any other field on like a consistent basis, or is it usually through your life been contracting and doing things of that nature?
I think, I kind of started out with my family and then construction, and I've always kind of
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I believe you stated that in the past you've had an opportunity to supervise or employees and things of that nature. Okay. Generally in the contracting area, I guess you have subcontractors and things of that nature.
being, self-employed, I've got people working for me now,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
so I'm doing all of that.
All right. All right. And obviously you've had to hire and fire people from jobs, I assume. Okay. Now, you said you've known somebody in the military before. Were you formerly in the military or somebody else you know?
I grew up, my father was had a career in the military, and I was, living on Army bases. I was born on an Army base, lived on Army bases.
All right. Let's see. I think we've just got a couple other questions. I know we're gonna hold on some of these. So, I believe you stated that you've experienced the sudden death of a child, or you know somebody that has.
I had a stepson that had leukemia.
I'm sorry to hear that. You said your wife is a realtor.
She
Okay, has she always worked as a realtor?
She really kind of, got a real estate license to buy lots and help me sell houses, and then blossomed into a good career for her.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have at this time, Judge.
I'm going to wait and follow up when we talk to the private judge.
Okay. We can move on then to juror 7.
Good morning, Juror 7. Okay, let's see. I know we were talking about, what you do for a living or working in the home, I know, with a 2-year-old. Your husband travels?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what type of work does he do?
Right now, they're working for a contracting firm called Refuse Materials. They're redoing the floors in Walmart.
Okay.
They're just going across the country from store to store.
Oh, wow.
And tile and epoxy, all of that.
Okay. You're fairly young, so did you work before you became a mother?
I did,
Okay.
mostly in retail and customer service. I worked at Harley-Davidson for a short time. I worked on the Emerald Princess Casino here, our little casino ship.
Okay.
I was a cocktail waitress for a short time. Mainly, I worked on St. Simon's in a surf shop.
Okay. And that Harley, is that Harley store the one up 95? Okay. I don't know if there are any other here in the area. I just noticed them stopping by a gas station on the way down. Okay. You've had a position before where you've supervised people? Okay, tell me about that.
That was at St. Simon's Beach and Surf, the little surf shop I worked on. It was just a family-owned business, so it was really easy to get a management position. I watched the store while the owner went out of the country for vacation.
Okay.
His mother was my supervisor, so she would come in the mornings when we opened, and I had them closed, but during the day it was just me and the rest of the employees.
Okay. Now, you say that you've known somebody who's been in law enforcement before?
I have some relatives in law enforcement. None are really close to me.
Okay.
I know I've got a cousin that is currently working and lives over on Pleasant.
Okay.
So,
All right. Kind of following up on that, military, you've had people that you've known, family or friends that have been in the military?
we're a big military family.
Yes. Okay.
My grandma was a nurse in the Army. My grandfather was in the Coast Guard. My father and his 2 brothers were all in the Marines. I have a cousin in the Air Force. I had a cousin in the Army who was medically discharged. And I have 2 cousins who are married to men in the military right now. One's an officer in the Army and one is currently deployed in the Marines.
Yeah, I would say that qualifies as a military family. You also stated that you had some type of legal training or something, or you know somebody that's been involved in the legal field?
I have a cousin, I think she lives in Illinois, who is a lawyer of some sort.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what she does.
Okay. We don't need to follow up on that anymore then. Also in the medical field, you stated that you've known somebody who works in the medical field.
Yeah, my grandma was a nurse in the Army, but she also retired. She was an Army.
And how about psychology, psychiatry?
I think my grandpa studied sociology and stuff like that when he was in college, but he later decided to study to be a minister.
Okay. And I think finally on that note, you know somebody that works with computers or in the IT field or something of that nature?
My cousin married a man in the Army who's an officer, but he majors in computer programming and stuff like that.
Now, you attend a church or a religious organization or affiliation or something like that here, correct?
Yes, I was raised up. I started at Bethel First Church of the Nazarene, which is no longer the Nazarene Church, because I grew up with my grandfather who was a minister. So I've been to the majority of the churches around here. I'm currently a member of Lakeside United Methodist, but I haven't attended regularly in a few years.
Okay. Kind of moving on to social media and things like that. You communicate via cell phone on applications other than text, correct?
Yes.
Okay, which ones do you use?
Mainly Facebook Messenger.
Okay, so obviously you're familiar with Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. Okay, are you big into that or?
I've had accounts on Facebook, on Instagram and Snapchat, but I don't get on them. It's mostly just Facebook.
Okay. And Craigslist?
I've been on it, mainly just looking into rental properties.
How about YouTube? Do you get on YouTube a lot?
I watch videos. That's really about it.
Like
Videos.
music videos? Okay. Now, you said you're familiar with Kick as well. How are you familiar with Kick?
Well, when you originally asked the question, I had it confused with another app. I thought it was a different kind of app.
Okay.
I thought it was an app where it could actually track your steps in Walmart and stuff like that. You could earn points if you scan certain items and other stores.
This is a different one. Okay. Now, do you remember what the name of the one you were thinking about is?
I thought it was Kick. It was something similar. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Did you hear the other jurors talking about what Kick was and realize that's not it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you said that you communicated with a stranger, somebody you've never met over the internet or a messaging service or social media before. Tell me about that.
Well, it started with my cousin, of course, was in the Army, and he used Facebook originally to meet people overseas and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I thought that was really interesting. I started adding people from different countries and stuff. And it never really went anywhere because they usually didn't speak the same language.
That's a problem.
I have
Yeah.
people I don't know contact me and try to talk with me and try to go on dates and stuff.
And did you ever follow up on that? Okay. I believe you said you've posted an online opinion before or something. Okay, tell me about that.
On Facebook, people post links about, I guess, different news feeds and stuff, and I'll like it, or I may make a comment on it underneath. I never go directly to the news feed where it came from. It's mostly just on Facebook.
Okay. Like your friends post something and then you're like, okay, well, I agree with this, I don't agree with it. Okay. All right. You talked a little bit about legal television shows and things like that. You've watched both of the fictional and the non-fictional. Tell me about which ones are your favorites that you particularly like.
I love watching Law&Order.
Okay. Now there's about 17 different versions of it now. Any in particular or?
SVU.
Okay. Now the non-fictional ones. Which ones do you like or do you watch or have you watched?
I'm not really sure about those.
Okay.
I know I've seen a few on TV and I've stopped and watched for a few minutes, but it's not something I try to watch on a regular basis.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, you stated that you've watched a legal docudrama before. Okay, tell me about that.
Well, it all started because I tried to keep up with the Casey Anthony case because that was really big around here. So I started watching documentaries on it because my sister she read the books and stuff on it. So I tried to keep up with stories like that just so I knew what was going on. It was really big.
All right. And you said that you followed a real trial before, like in the news because of interest. Same thing you're talking about?
Sort of, but I also tried to follow along big ones like, with what happened with Michael Jackson. And another story that happened here locally, it involved a little boy named Christopher Barrios. Because I knew some people who happened to be family members and a girl that used to babysit and things like that.
Okay. Now, all those cases that you followed, I guess, in the news and had interest in, would following those or what you learned in those news reports, would those in any way affect your ability to be fair to both sides in this case? Okay. Okay, I believe you stated that you've had the opportunity to care for somebody who's been either very sick or disabled or something of that nature. Okay, tell me about that.
When I was 14, my mom was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and a year later she passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But also, I try to help take care of my grandfather. He had an aneurysm, had a stroke, and his vision's impaired, his walking's impaired, so things like that.
Okay. You've also worked with kids in the past in some pay capacity, correct? You've already told us about your job history, so it was some of those jobs? Or was it something
really.
different?
I helped in church.
Okay.
I used to help with children's church and Sunday school, but also I babysit for my friends. I was doing it on a regular basis until about a month ago. Now I if they need me to pick someone up from school, I'll pick them up from school, or on the spur of the moment, need somebody to watch them if they get home from work, I'll do that.
Okay. Now you stated that I think you've known somebody who's been arrested for a crime before. Okay, tell me a little about that.
I have a lot of family members who have been in situations like that.
I understand.
So, my sister, my father, my mother, my brother, my brother-in-law, a lot of people.
Okay. let's generally, what types of crimes?
Well, my sister got caught shoplifting.
Okay.
From a Dollar General. She got caught stealing nipples for her baby bottle.
Okay.
And my brother and my brother-in-law, they have a rough history.
Yeah.
They have both just recently got released from prison. They were in prison for 4 years for recharges and other felonies like that.
Okay.
I think my mother and my father, they were mostly drug related.
Okay. Okay. Any of those experiences in any way, from what your family had to deal with, would that impact your ability to be fair to both sides in this case?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I believe you've known somebody who's been falsely accused of a crime before?
I have an uncle who has been in prison for 20 years. And of course, because I was younger, I don't know exactly how the trials went.
Right.
From what I've heard from it, it was a domestic dispute of some sort, and his girlfriend at the time had a lot of legal ties. Her family was real.
Bless you. I just said bless you, sorry.
She had quite a few family members who had jobs in the court system.
Okay.
So, from what I hear, it had an
Bless you.
effect on the decision.
Okay. Given that it was, I guess, disconnected 20 years, you really don't know exactly what happened. Is there any way that would impact your ability to be fair to both the state and the defense in this case? And you've been a witness before? Had to testify for something, civil, criminal?
I was subpoenaed when I was 16 because there was a boy that lived down my street. I don't know what happened to him. He had some sort of breakdown. He started stalking me, and he made a hit list of people that he wanted to kill. And I was on that hit list. So we all got subpoenaed to court when I was in high school and had to go in and make statements about it.
Okay. And when you said you've made a report to the police, is that what it was about?
That was about my brother.
Okay. And just, I guess he was not behaving or doing...
He stole my laptop.
Okay. Well, you can't pick your family sometimes, can you? I think a lot of us in here understand that. I believe you said that you've known somebody who's been investigated for some type of child abuse or neglect or misconduct or something like that.
My sister was investigated because a neighbor who happened to be a family member, they made a false call. And it was something, as soon as the lady from DFAC walked in the house, she immediately dismissed it and went on her way.
Okay. It was something like nobody's taking care of these kids and they walk in and everything's fine. It was...
She tried to say that they were locking their kids in their rooms for hours on end, but they didn't have doors on the children's bedrooms. So as soon as she walked in, she said she didn't actually see anything else.
Okay. So it was just some kind of jilted neighbor that was trying to... Okay. That makes sense. You stated just a couple of other questions that you've known somebody who's experienced the sudden death of a child. Okay.
That also has to do with a family I knew in the Christopher Barrios family.
Yeah. Okay.
But there was also a family that lived on my road. I was friends with them. My sister was really close with them. They went to school together. Their little boy, nobody noticed he had walked out the house, and somebody backed into him when they were coming out the driveway.
I'm sorry to hear that. I believe you stated that you or somebody you know has done online dating.
I have friends who have tried it. I don't know much about it, but from what I can tell, it didn't go very far.
Okay. All right. Now, you stated something about, I think Mr. Kilgore asked about a child falling asleep in the car. Okay, tell me about that.
My little girl loves to sleep in the car. Every time. I don't know why.
Okay. Like short trips, long trips, everything?
Every
Okay. All right. And you are somebody that transports to daycare, correct? Okay. And how often do you do that?
Not very often. When I was babysitting, I would say it was more often because I kind of considered myself like a daycare. I had to take the children with me everywhere I went.
Right.
But right now it's just maybe once or twice a week if I have to go pick somebody up from school.
Okay. All I think those are all of the questions for now. Thank you.
Before you go, Mr. Kilgore, we're going to take a break for the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we tend to break mid-morning and mid-afternoon, so you might want to keep that in mind when you decide how much liquid intake. I think it's a nice way of putting that. So let's take a break till about 20 after.
That's all right for the jury.